Welcome back to Planet 13. This is Cultivated Live. I'm Jay Rosenthal. You are Krista Raymer. We are here with the team from Elevated Signals. We have Liam and we have Paul.
Thanks for having us.
I'm a big fan of Elevated Signals. I like Canadian tech. I like Canadian tech that is cannabis related. Who wants to give sort of the rundown of what Elevated Signals is, and then we'll go dive deeper. You guys
go for it.
You guys rock, paper, scissors.
So nice, Canadian style.
Yeah.
Elevated Signals is a software company out of Vancouver, Canada, where we call ourselves Manufacturing Execution Systems. So we help producers, operators in cultivation and post-harvest processing to keep track of inventory, and certainly with a lens on compliance, GMP, GPP level record keeping and documentation. Something we face in Canada a lot, and we see internationally as well, of course. So.
And with that, sort of the compliance part, but the operational part, it is to get to be obviously always compliant as a cultivator or post-cultivation sort of processor or manufacturer, but also be a good business operator, right? Like the CFOs love you, is that right?
Yeah, all the secret data lives on the shop floor, and our job is to help kind of extract that. All the information traditionally lives on pen and paper or Excel sheets. It's like siloed information, and how do you get it out in real time? How do you do any cool data analytics with it? So our job is just working with these awesome producers to help kind of digitally transform their manufacturing. So CFOs can get this information out. Operations team has better visibility. Quality is rolling. So
the lawyers, the compliance people, everybody's
all in on it. Exactly.
And Canada's not a new market, and this type of technology was needed from day one, 10 years ago, right? But it continues to evolve. Is that because the operators are getting more sophisticated, because the technology is more sophisticated, or both, or all of those things?
Yeah. Go ahead.
It was a great point. Definitely the Canadian space, internationally in Australia and throughout the whole U.S., operators are becoming much more mature, just in their business thinking. Gone are the days of just getting as much cannabis material out there as fast as possible. Everyone's got an eye on profitability, understanding their margins, just really honing in on the products that they want to produce. And so much of that is looking at your internal business systems that let you kind of do that. So, back in the day when it was you were first licensed, it was all about staying compliant. Now, like you're saying, Jay, it's just about being a good manufacturer, being a good operator, and growing your business that way, just being much more mature about it.
Yeah. And Canada's got a good run at this. The technology is an important part of it for the operators, for the processing, for the manufacturing, for the operations and compliance. And most of the world is going to look like Canada, at least that's my sense, much more than it does look like where we are today. Mm-hmm. Is that part of the thinking? If we could really hone it in and be the best in class in this type of thing, when the world grows to look more like Canadian cannabis, we are well positioned to do so.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. That's part of our philosophy, how we've built our software and how we've independently validated ourselves against that standard. GMP, as an example, Europe, Australia, Canada, of course, there's much more of a lens towards GMP level of production, farmer grade, and we've sunk our teeth into that perspective. Obviously, we need to be able to handle sort of ground floor inventory management basics as part of cultivation and processing, but that seems to be where the future of cannabis is going to head, and even in the U.S. When we talk to operators, that's what they're looking in their crystal ball when that happens. I'm not sure, but FDA regulation, GMP level production is where we've sort of placed our chips.
It will be a shock to this system. I don't know, maybe not in this building, but in cultivation in California and other places that is, we've been to those places, we've also been to the ones in Canada, and you're this is an entirely different vibe. There's no dogs walking the floor of a grow in Ontario, whereas, in Colorado or a hoop house, it's
Could be a little bit more lax, a little bit more chill, totally. Yeah, different production systems. Definitely find operators are still kind of thinking along the same lines in terms of what they want their business to achieve. And in Canada, it's a lot higher focus on quality Not to say that American products like aren't high quality, but just like GPP standards are a lot bigger focus. And in US, it's all about like performance. Kind of thing, performance of your crop, performance of the tools and the staff that you have, and like that's their sort of MO in terms of driving towards like profitability.
The definition of quality is very different, I think.
Yes.
Like, and who is the definition of quality, right? Like in the US example that you're just talking about would definitely be what's the customer's perception of quality. And this other side of what we're talking about, we're actually talking about like regulatory and like international value of a raw material. Earlier, you made a comment about having access to data and being able to make data decisions. I think like inventory management of raw materials is one of those areas where it's provides so much opportunity to be able to dial something in, but people have really struggled with this as a way to be able to forecast product coming down. Do you have any examples of great application of data that you've seen that have been really interesting?
Yeah, I think on the inventory side, everyone's trying to get visibility into what they can sell ultimately. There's a lot of producers, even mature producers up in Canada who've been doing it for a while, who still have a difficult time answering that question. So we try and help teams do a lot of things, but a big part of what we do is to help unlock the production chain such that the products that they're putting out, they know what's available, when it's going to be available, and get it out to consumers as fast as possible. So I think we take that lens on inventory and production, and that really snowballs into the digital record keeping that we do. In Canada it's mandated, lots of producers use paper, but putting all of that data together as well and making that efficient unlocks the team to accomplish some really interesting KPIs like write first time documents, and eliminating this paper glut lets teams cycle through their production much more quickly and get products to market faster as well. And especially in this industry when it's pretty cost conscious and people are trying to be much more efficient, you can do more with less people. You can scale up with the same headcount. You don't have to fire people because you go to digital. You can just put more volume to market, which is interesting.
And you will have an entire footprint. Like that's what I think is really interesting, is that in Canada, if you were to look at some of the ways that these businesses were built initially, they were maybe really large with a big physical footprint, but weren't necessarily setting themselves up from a data perspective to have a full sightline of what was happening in the business. And it's crazy how quickly you forget. Like we were looking through some data around product sell-through in Canada, and we had to be like, oh, actually there's a caveat on those like 4 sales months because there was an issue with hardware shipments from China. It's like that's the level of information that gets lost unless you have good record keeping within your own business.
And it's also the worst idea in the world to keep records on paper. Is that right? True or false?
Very true.
But isn't it shocking? Like when people tell me that still is the case with like cultivators and manufacturers that you're like, how is that?
Like it serves a time and purpose. There's benefits to paper. It's like you can just jot something down right away, and but like then you get into issues like sometimes paper just disappears, or like the really interesting thing is like the travel time that you have to like move documentation around. So you like think of lean manufacturing and you think of like waste. A big thing in waste is like time, and just like time spent moving around. At a few of our producers, like these really, really big ones, before we were working with them, they bought bikes for their staff. They're like, this will actually expedite the paper moving forward. So it's like, let's get bikes for them.
They probably didn't tell the insurance company they were buying.
Yeah, exactly.
Around the facility with paper. But do you want to give us like 1 or 2 examples of clients that you work with that are using elevated signals? Can you talk about
some great teams like Rubicon Organics, working with the Decibel team, MTL, Carmel.
All those people put out fire. Those are like
they're awesome producers. Like we're super fortunate to work with them. They just bring like really modern thinking in their operations. Some great producers in Australia as well who are just like very tech forward, and they see like this is how you need to operate a business in like today's modern world, much more competitive. They're like, we're gonna just do it right the first time, and like, you know, like you were saying, get everything set up from the get-go instead of like retroactively trying to figure out like you need to get these systems in place. Like let's do it right and start to build that data lake from the get-go.
Even some of those ones you've noted, even though some have been around a long time, like they're not the first big ones that you think of when you think about Canadian cannabis. Like they're not the big ones, right? They are sizable, but they are actually right behind the first wave of people that failed. And these are like second wave people to say, like, we need to do it right, and we want to put out really good product. And how do you put out really good product consistently? You need the systems in place from day one, not to try to retroactively do it 3 years in. Like, we actually want to know what's working now,
Today.
and we want to be able to look back at what's working now a year from now to say, like, this work didn't work, and like all of those things. And I think those companies you just mentioned, like, they are in a class largely by themselves, like in Canada, putting out incredibly good product consistently. And I'm going to credit Elevated Signals with all that.
I'm sure those brands are super excited
We're gonna
about
pass
that.
it right back to them. Yeah.
Like, you can never
Blushing
get
a
rid of
little
us.
bit,
We're
but
the
we're a
reason.
little piece of the puzzle.
Well, I think it's the sort of the Venn diagram of like people who care about the technology part of it, right? And engineers and product people. And then you have like really serious growers who are passionate about what they are bringing to it. And the two do have a Venn diagram, like in cannabis certainly, but like that is key to like, so you know what they need and can build towards it. You know what they need from a compliance, there is like a back and forth as well. Like you wouldn't be where you are today as a company if it weren't for the partners that are driving where the business needs to go.
1000%. Like again, like we really work on like a partnership mentality with these producers where it's just like they're the ones who are in the trenches, like cultivating and manufacturing, and like our responsibility is to kind of provide the software that makes their life easier. So it's that partnership and give and take a little bit. And like the Venn diagram, we like to think about the overlapping part is like the data nerds, like that's where it like combines together, and that's the thing. So when you like see people who are just like looking at all the information and vibing out on it, you're like, this is really cool of like what they can do with it, and like seeing the kind of like business information that they want to unlock is super interesting.
It's great. We wish you nothing but the best.
Yeah,
not just because you're Canadian, but also because I think and like what is happening in Canada and has happened over 5 years is what's going to happen everywhere, maybe, but even here, as you're talking about, like as it becomes more closer to federal, like I think there's going to be a wake-up call too.
Yeah. I feel like as Canadians we have this like responsibility, like we have the crystal ball, you know. It's like we've been here 5 years in the future, like we can bring these lessons back to like the new industries and just don't make the same mistakes that we did or try to do different things.
But
totally.
But maybe they'll fix it quicker, right?
You know,
yeah. Well, Liam and Paul, really thankful that you were very gracious with your time, but also thank you for sharing your expertise and insight, and we look forward to connect with you down the road when we're sort of closer to home, for sure. But thanks so much.
Thank you for having us.
You got it. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to be back with the team from Urban Grow for the last conversation of the day, and then we'll wrap up from Planet 13. We'll be right back.